In the next few videos, we will be discussing functions. Let's begin with the definition of a function. So I'll give you a second to read the first two lines here. A function is called a function when it receives an input x and produces exactly one output y, which can then be expressed as an ordered pair x comma y. In other terms, for something to be called a function, what should happen? Every x in the domain should be associated with exactly one y in the range. Now, if you're wondering why do we care about functions and why we're talking about functions right now, functions can be very, very useful. For example, if you ever want to know the costs of running a business, you can model that as a function. Or if you want to know the profit that you're going to make from selling a certain product, that could be modeled as a function. Now, the numbers that enter a function are listed in the domain. These are usually called the x values, and so we call that the domain. And the numbers that come out on the other end from the function, when you compute the x's, those numbers are called the range of the function f. Now, visually speaking, if you have a picture and you want to know whether the picture represents a function or not, what can you do? What you can do is test it using the vertical line test. So this test basically says, if every vertical line intersects the graph at no more than one point, then the graph represents a function. So in other terms, if I look at this first example over here, 23, and I'm trying to decide whether this is a function or not, how can I decide this? Well, what I do is draw a vertical line and then check how many times is crossing the graph. It's only once. So this is great. So far, this thing is a function. But I need to have a guarantee. So in order to have a guarantee, I must be able to repeat the test as many times as I want, and the same thing should happen every time. So if I do it another time, it crosses once. If I do it another time, no matter where I do this test, I will always find that the vertical line that I draw crosses the original graph only once. So this will be a function. It passes the test. Now, if I look at the circle directly across from this, that is an example of something that is not a function. What's the reason for that? Well, all I have to do really is draw one vertical line. It doesn't really matter where I draw it. The vertical line crosses the curve twice. And so, not every vertical line intersects the graph at no more than one point. So in other terms, there's a line that is crossing the picture more than once, which means that this thing is not a function anymore. So again, to be a function, it is very difficult. You have to pass the test over and over and over and over. To fail the test, all I have to do is fail once. If you can find me one line where the line crosses the original graph twice, then you're done. That's it. It's not a function. So I'll go through the next four pictures real quick. So this blob looking shape is not a function because if I draw the line, for example, right here, I will notice that the line crosses twice. As a matter of fact, if I draw the line over here, it crosses 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And that's enough to say that this thing is not a function. So again, all I have to do is run the test once. If the line crosses 2 or 3 or 4 times or whatever, then I can stop and say it's not a function. But if my line crosses once, I got to repeat the test over and over and over and make sure that every line crosses once to call the thing a function. So for instance, the parabola shape over here, the line crosses once. So that's not enough to say anything. I do the test again. It crosses once. I do the test again. And no matter how many times I do the test, every line crosses the original parabola once. So this thing will be a function. Again, the second parabola down here, no matter how many vertical lines you do, every time you do a line, it crosses once with the parabola. So that means that this thing is a function again. Finally, the last shape is kind of an ellipse. Again, here we go. If I do one line, the line crosses twice. So that's enough for me to stop and say this thing is not a function. Now be careful. Some people will stick their line like at the very, very start where it crosses only once. Again, remember, if it crosses once, it doesn't mean anything. You have to do the test again and again and again until you find that no line crosses twice or more. So if you do your first line right there, you might be tempted to say, oh, this line is crossing only once, so the thing is a function, but not really, because one line doesn't decide anything when it crosses only once. If I do it again, here we go, it crosses twice. So again, it fails the test, so it's not a function.